You could probably already tell by the title of this podcast, but just in case, a heads up. Adult language will definitely be making an appearance. So if you're at work, around the kids, or just in front of some judgy pets, you might want to grab some headphones. Here we go. Hey, it's Leslie, and welcome to My Effing Desk. Glad you're here. We got a great episode coming up, but first I want to get to saying hello in a new language. We're up to 18 different countries now that people are listening in across 5 continents. That is so amazing. So I went easy this episode for my hello in another language. I'm doing hello in French. So for my entire semester of French in junior high, I remember that bonjour is hello or allô, if I remember correctly. So that knocks out our listeners in France and parts of Canada. Woohoo! Before I introduce our next guest, I wanted to tell you that the listener survey is up on the website. So if you head over to myeffingdeskpodcast.com/survey, you will see a listener survey there that I would love for you to fill out. It should not take more than a couple minutes. I made it short on purpose so that you would actually do it. And it's just got a few questions about what you would like to see for next season. There's only a couple episodes left on this season, and I'd like to incorporate your thoughts for the next one to make the show even better. You'll see on the survey that I ask what sort of creative work you're into, what type of guests you'd like to see on the show, what other features you would like. Just trying to get more of a feel for what it is that you would like to hear on My Effing Desk. myeffingdeskpodcast.com/survey. Thanks so much. Okay, today's guest is Crystal Lowery, and the two of us have known each other as internet friends for years. We've worked together on different pieces for Mock Mom and Sandwiches and Psych Meds and all sorts of other shenanigans. We have a similar dry, kind of sarcastic humor. She's one of those people I've always wanted to meet, but have never had the chance to until now. That's something that I'm loving about this show. I get to just use it as an excuse to meet all these awesome people that I've known for years online. Crystal is a stand-up comedian, humorist, essayist, author, screenwriter, TV writer, and contributor to all sorts of sites, making millions of people laugh on sites like Scary Mommy, Huffington Post, For Every Mom, In the Powder Room, Sandwiches and Psych Meds, and on and on. Please welcome to My Effing Desk, Crystal Lowery. Thank you so much for doing this, by the way, because I know you're so busy.
It's like, it'll be a good excuse to talk to you finally for the first time.
Yeah.
We need to be having these conversations more as moms in the creative space. So we're just so dismissed.
You want to jump on in?
Let's do it.
Okay. The first thing I like to ask people is if creativity was kind of always part of your life, or was it something you came about later?
Yeah. So I was a late bloomer, which is what adults call you when they're too polite to say short and ugly. Just like the frizzy red hair, skinny, tiny, freckles. And I didn't even go through puberty till I was like 16 years old. So I always had to lead with my personality. And I've always had a knack for making people laugh, just quick-witted. And I just enjoy the reaction and stuff. Not from a need for attention. I don't really care about that. I just enjoy getting on with people. So yeah, ever since I was like just little tiny, I was always leaning into my personality instead of my looks. I feel sorry sometimes for those JonBenet Ramsey types that were just born beautiful out of the womb. Yeah. And they never had to go through like an ugly stage or have to develop a personality. Amy Poehler has a line in Parks and Rec when she's like talking to Anne, who's just beautiful. It's Rashida Jones. And she's like, Oh, there, Anne. I remember you've been pretty your whole life. That's why.
I mean, there's something to that. Like, was it John Hamm's character on 30 Rock where Tina Fey was dating him and he thought he was wonderful at everything, like every single thing. He's like, no, I'm an awesome tennis player. No, I'm super funny. And he was horrible, but he was a knockout. And so he just had
everybody just gave him so much more credit. Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So
Yeah.
do you think that that's where your humor came from then? Did you grow up in a funny household, or do you
Oh,
feel?
yeah. So my dad was just a Polak from Chicago, really funny all the time. He was on all the time. And I just assumed that that's how dads were. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that other people's dads were like serious and quiet, but he was always pulling our leg and making like crass jokes. And I don't know, it's just part of how I grew up.
That's so fun.
Yeah, it was super fun. He was great.
And so then you somehow ended up in seminary. Is that right?
Yeah,
Do I have-
we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah. Okay. This doesn't sound funny, but I feel like sometimes pain and trauma helps us have a sense of humor to get through.
Absolutely.
But I was raised in a religious cult, actually. I don't want to alienate any of your listeners, but just very much like legalistic, works-based. You do all the right things and then you'll get God's approval. You do the wrong things, you'll get excommunicated. We had our own special dietary restrictions, our own holy days. And we were raised to kind of believe that mainstream Christianity was deceived and basically like pagan, I guess. So I converted to Christianity when I was in college, and I just had a lot of questions since I was raised in this religious cult. So I knew that if I ever wanted to get a master's degree, I would go to seminary. So I did, but then here's sort of the funny thing. So I have like this faith, but it doesn't really match up with Christian culture, because I was raised in this household where like swearing was fine, being crass was good, be real. And then I spent a lot of time in the United Kingdom. So I'm like politically liberal, fiscally believe we need to take care of folks. So I have this desire to like learn about theology and what makes people tick, and this degree in theology. But at the same time, I don't feel like I fit in with like Christian culture a lot of ways, but I don't know that I care anymore now that I'm older. I'm like, you know what? I'm just me. I can be sweary and make fart jokes and care for the poor and the sick and hate on Donald Trump. And if you think I'm not Jesus enough for you, so what?
Right. I mean, God had to have a good sense of humor.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
The platypus alone, there's proof everywhere.
And I think too, like there's almost a mandate on humanity to be creative and redemptive, because we're supposed to reveal and reflect a creative God. And so God put that in us. Man, I didn't think we were going to go this deep.
I'm jotting this down. I'm like, a mandate on humanity. I love it.
Yeah. The best way to honor him is to live in your creativity, because we are to reveal and reflect a creative God. So I do believe there's a holiness in crafting a good fart joke. That's my spot. That's my sweet spot.
That is poetry right there. No, but in all sorts of stuff that I've read about creativity from people of all different faiths, there is that idea of, even if it's not from God per se, some people want to say nature or the universe or whatever it is that has given us this. It's something that is uniquely human. Like we don't need to make quilts colorful or with patterns to stay warm. We could just have a piece of fabric, but we choose to embellish them. We choose to paint and draw and make fart jokes. And so it is this gift, and not using it is somewhat of a sin. I think that a lot of people,
it's a waste. Yeah. Like my dogs can't sing, right. And that's how we're made in God's image as humans, is we're made to be creative. So I never went to seminary believing that I was going to be in ministry. I just don't think I'm cookie cutter enough for it. I don't think they like me enough for it, but I feel a very deep sense of security when it comes to my relationship with God, that I don't need kind of outside judgment, and I'm just free to be who I am.
It just hit me that you do stand up, or normally in normal times.
Yes, in normal times. Yeah.
And there is sort of a parallel there, isn't there, of standing up and a truth telling and having an audience, having a congregation there in front of you, and sort of a bond somehow. You would think on the surface they're different, but I don't know.
Well, I don't know, I guess. I think I feel a lot more accepted by the stand-up community and like the ragtag writers and comedians of the world than I ever will in church. And that's just because we lead with our fallenness and our insecurity. I will say this. You would think it's fun to hang out with stand-up comedians, but a lot of them are super socially awkward. But some of them are so cool. And I've met people from all walks of life, different religions, people that are completely different from me, pursuing that passion. And if that's all that ever comes of it, then that was worth it.
It is. It's a group of people you would never get to meet. I've had that same experience in theater and actually hanging out with my brother's comedian friends. He's a stand-up comic. And it's so different than you would think. You would think they're just on all the time and it's all clowns and pies in the faces.
Right.
And I think there's some of that, but it depends on
the group. Yeah, I think a lot of people are motivated to do stand-up because they need the attention, and that's exhausting to me. I'm just motivated to do it because I like to write the jokes, and I have to have a reason or a place to perform them, I guess.
That's why you jumped into it. I mean, it seems like such a scary... To me, that is the most intimidating form of humor. Just standing up there and putting your stuff out on the line for people to immediately judge it and give you that feedback.
Right. They don't lie. I mean, they laugh
do not.
They don't. So I actually got into it because I've been a comedy writer forever, but I felt like, and you might feel this way too, that everybody you know is a writer, right? So I was like, what is one thing I can do to differentiate myself? And I was voted in high school most likely to be a stand-up comedian. So I was like, I guess I'll try. So I went up to an open mic one night about 5-6 years ago, and it clicked. It was like, oh yeah, I should have been doing this the whole time. But I will say this about like stage fright is it goes away. Like I used to be scared to go on stage, and I'm not scared at all anymore. And I think part of it is just having some good jokes in your pocket that you know are going to hit every time. But yeah, you can get immediate judgment, and you do have tough crowds sometimes. But overall, like no guts, no glory. You get all the glory for it too. Whereas if you're in like an improv situation or a troupe with a group of people, you can blame others when it goes wrong, but you also don't get all the glory when it goes right.
What is it with like, improv people? It's always like improv. And then stand-up is like, oh my God, you got balls of steel. And improv's like, get out of here.
Improv's like, yeah, we've heard you tell that joke 5,000 times. I'm like, yeah, but it's a good opener and it works. So I'm telling it again. You do repeat jokes as part of the deal. That's a myth of stand-up too. Like, do you ever watch Mrs. Maisel on
of course,
Amazon? I mean, it's so cute. I love it, but it is not anything like real stand-up comedy. She just goes and riffs and comes up with beautiful things right off the bat. I'm like, that is not it at all. We make it look like that's what we're doing, but everything we do is basically like a very overacted script.
You know, it's funny. I remember years ago when I was really getting into Kathy Griffin, I was talking to my dad about her and we both just love her. And I was like, all of her little shtick, you know, getting excited and talking really fast. And, oh, I just remembered this that I was going to tell you about. Do you think, Dad, that is really her or what?
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, no, she scripted that out.
100%.
Carefully calculated.
I can even tell you, because I've done a lot of comedy classes, like I took stand-up at Second City, and even the crowd work that people do is rehearsed. When we were learning how to do crowd work, which I'm not great at, it's not my thing, but what you do is you think of jokes that you already know that you are going to say, and then you pick someone out of the audience that could lead you there. So like if I had jokes about CrossFit, I would look for a fit guy in the front row and I'd be like, oh, you look like you work out, sir. What do you do? I thought you were going to say CrossFit. And then you make a bunch of CrossFit jokes. But yeah, it's all pre-rehearsed. It is.
What about heckling? What have you done to deal with that?
Heckling's interesting, right? So heckling isn't just negative comments from the crowd. It's just any interruption at all. So basically, when someone steps on your punchline and just either says it for you or just wants to talk throughout your set or something like that. So I haven't really had anyone be like angry with me, but I have had people just sitting in the very front row, like this drunk guy that was trying to hit on the girl next to him, and he was just talking at full volume. So I just sat with him for a minute. I got a little bit crunched down the stage and I just got my mic. I was like, sir. And then I just told the whole set just to the dude. And that was like part of the comedy of it all, is everybody around was like, what an asshole, this guy. There are a few things you can do to shut him down. Like if someone steps over your punchline, you say, yeah, the punchline would be even funnier if you let me finish, you know. But I think it just depends on where you are. So most of my stand-up I've done has been in Texas, and people are pretty polite, as you know.
Yeah.
So they won't do that. Now, I don't know if I did it out here in Chicago, if it would be the same. We'll see. Whenever the world opens up again.
Are you ready to get back on stage and do that?
Yeah, I am.
Mm-hmm. I feel like motherhood has prepared you for dealing with others.
Okay. Well, I know you can relate to this. I think trolls have prepared me for it, right?
Yes.
Like you and I have had some doozies over the years where you don't even have to be famous to get trolled these days. I mean, you just get one or two things that go viral and you know that a post or a joke or something you've written has really resonated with the world based on how many trolls you get. It used to really freak me out, and now it's just like a badge of honor of, oh, I must have gone viral again because I'm getting trolls.
Here they come.
Here they come. And so I'm kind of like impervious to their criticism because they can take anything you say or do and just be super mean. I actually have good stand-up bit about trolls, which I'm not going to do for you now, but it's pretty good.
It's all material.
Yeah, everything's material, right? Same thing with writing. Anything bad that happens to you, the tool we have is to redeem it through writing. I did the David Sedaris masterclass.
Oh,
and that was like
good?
It's good. Yeah, it's really good. His whole opener was like, I don't know how people aren't writers because how else do you redeem all the shitty stuff that happens to you? Completely. I love him so much. He's the best.
I'm just rereading. What is it? The diabetes without. Let's talk about diabetes. Let's discuss.
Let's something like that. Yeah.
So great. No, completely. It's therapy. It's creativity. It's all of those things. It's like the way to get through.
And it's sharing and saying like, you're not alone. I'm not alone. We've all felt this way before. If you're brave enough to admit it.
But it's funny because you get that side of people saying, thank you for saying the stuff I can't say. Mm-hmm. I just feel so seen, like my mother-in-law is a bitch or whatever it is that they feel like they can't say. And then when something does go viral and all of a sudden it's like, I don't know. I remember one time someone got mad over something I wrote about gluten. And I write sorts of
You're like, gluten is what you're going to pick on?
Yeah.
Gluten. Yeah. People were pissed when I did a thing for Scary Mommy and I had kale chips. I was like making fun of kale chips. The kale chip camp is strong. I think it's because I was also making fun of the MLMs in it, and the MLM people wanted to hate on the kale chips. I don't know.
I mean, that's a mafia. You got to watch out.
I'm scared.
If I brought up the kale chip thing here, I would like automatically lose my house in Austin. So I just can't. That's right. I stay away.
You would lose your Austin card, even though you were raised there, right? Like you're from, where are you from?
No, I'm from Wichita Falls.
Oh, okay. Even more country. That was the infamous site of the Walmart wine lady.
I made a joke about that too. And I pissed off my hometown. I was like, there's literally nothing else to do there but drive around Walmart. What were you doing in England? I know you lived there.
So if I didn't think paying for 2 master's degrees in seminary was punishment enough, I put my husband through a PhD in the New Testament. So he's a literal biblical scholar. Just swinging back to our other conversation. It's so funny because I don't feel accepted by church folks, but I'm like, I should be a varsity church folk here. I've spent $100,000 on theological education. So who won that argument, right?
Right. I mean,
it was Sally Mae that won that argument. He was doing his PhD. And then for my day job, I do cardiology. So I was working in cardiology. And then we were over there for a long time.
I mean, y'all just Jesus it up. Like,
seriously, like we were broke for the Lord for the longest time. I think that's also where I lost all my fucks. I was like, you know what? If I can spend $100,000 on theological education and y'all still aren't happy with me, I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm done.
And that's like historically a very accepted thing to buy your spot in the church, like to pay for your sins. So why is it a problem now?
I think it's just like some people are just always going to be holier than thou. And like, I don't play the game. I think being real is the only place for growth. And
I was looking up one of your old bits that you had done about parents these days a couple of years ago. And I'd forgotten about it, kind of talking about some of these criticisms that you hear now, the typical thing that, these new parents, they don't stay home with their kids or they're on screens too much. And you kind of turn it on its head and say, okay, well, we have to worry about car seats because you didn't even have car seats back then. Or you would just throw your kids outside and be like, don't come back until the street light's on. And so I think it goes back to that tragic element of humor and truth telling that it's hard being a parent. Like it's hard in any time, but to hear all this criticism when so many of the problems we deal with did not exist or the expectations were so different back then.
Yeah.
Was that what led you to do that?
I think it was a friend that felt really under pressure or criticized for some silly thing, like the car seat strap was lower than normal or something. And I was like, no, hold on. These people used to be on the phone all the time, smoking their Marlboro Lights. I mean, and back in the 50s, they were on downers or something, right? They were on tranquilizers. I'm like, no, we absolutely do not get to criticize. And actually, I think because of the advancement of early childhood education science, which you know tons about, I'm sure, we're better parents than previous generations. Like we understand attachment theory and brain developments and the harm of hitting kids. And, back in the day, everybody was beat.
Oh, yeah.
But now we know that, no, actually, you have to teach them empathy by being empathetic to them. So I think that we are. I mean, I know there's still some really bad parents out there, but because of science, I think that we're doing better and we're getting better.
I loved that. That just spoke to me. You could tell. I was just like,
well, you have twins, right? So, I mean, that's just extra.
I have 11-year-old twins and then a 6-year-old. So yeah, it's a whole other level when you jump right into parenthood with 2. And it's just,
I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah. What do I do? Speaking of juggling everything, how do you manage all that? You have a full-time job, you've got a couple kids, husband, dogs, all this, and you still make time for your work, your creative work.
I do. I think I just have to know my limits. In the stand-up world, you will get folks that are on a stage every single night. Those people usually don't have a family or a lot of times jobs, I just am like, I'm just going to have a different energy I bring to it. When I was doing stand-up regularly before COVID, I would be like, I will be on a stage twice a month and that's all I can manage. It's like, I just am not a young single person without responsibility. If I'm going to do this, I have to do it on my own terms. Right now in my day job career, I've hit a pretty good sweet spot because I work from home, which is almost unheard of in cardiology. And then I also keep a little bit of clinical hours at the local hospital, but that's how I'm managing. And my poor kids have been virtual learning for basically a year. They've just been home. I know, bless their little hearts. So I don't know. I think you have to know what you can do and know your limits. And you have to have expectations for yourself. Don't let other people impose their expectations on you. And the other thing is, I think a lot of times, especially with moms specifically, there's almost an expectation that we should put ourselves out to pasture. It's like, okay, well, you're done with all of that creative stuff. Now it's time for you to just be whatever society wants you to be. And I don't agree with that. I look toward role models that are older that have accomplished things. I'm like, just because I'm 40 doesn't mean I'm done. Like who was it? Nora Ephron. She wrote Sleepless in Seattle when she was in her 50s or 60s. I'm like,
oh, I didn't realize. I knew she was older, but I didn't know
she was older, or maybe even late 40s. I don't know, but she had a late going career. And then you have like your Anne Lamotte who are in their 60s and just thriving right now. So I don't think we should be putting ourselves out to pasture. It's like, yeah, I'm 40. Okay. And I have a family and a career. And I don't think that there's a time expiration date on talent.
Completely. It's funny because that was one of the reasons I wanted to start the podcast. I kept butting up against the idea that I guess it's society's expectation that we do have an expiration date. And really that it almost is whenever you became a mom. That's your expiration
exactly when
date.
That's your expiration date. I'll have to paraphrase this meme I read about it. But basically what it is internalized misogyny. When you are made to believe that as soon as you become a mom, your talent and your time and your passion are no longer yours. That isn't being selfless. What that is just systemic misogyny, telling you don't matter anymore and you have nothing else to contribute but being a mother. And like, yeah, I'm a good mom and I have a lot going for me in that area of my life, but I am also a person. And I don't think that I have this talent and drive for nothing.
I mean, talk about a recipe for resentment, if not.
Yeah.
Speaking of previous generations who didn't have that option, honestly, who didn't have the systems in place for the most part.
I mean, they weren't even allowed to stop having children.
Right.
They just had to pop one out every year.
Exactly.
Where I'm like, me getting my tubes tied was just an act of feminism and I loved it.
Right. Not even having control over your own body, of course.
Your own fertility. Yeah.
That can't help but be better for the next generation to see us. And probably even, I feel like it was beginning to start with our mom's generation as well. taking back a little bit of your life after having kids.
We
But
still
it's
have a
slow.
really long way
It's
to go.
slow, yeah.
Like, I've been heartbroken and just actually furious by the statistics that have come out of COVID. They say like 30% of moms in the workforce have had to quit their jobs to take care of their kids. Yeah. And in the meantime, the actual number of workers that are employed has increased. And that's because men have taken the jobs. And it's heartbreaking to me to think that, yep, when all is said and done, like the burden still lies on mom. Whatever she's doing, you have to just give it up.
It totally does. It's always on the chopping block.
Yes.
You know, there's that New York Times article that just came out last week with the photo essay, I think that they did, and I can't look at it.
I'm going to have to read it.
Everyone is talking about it. I think it's hard when you have a supportive husband who is further along than maybe previous generations, where they do want you to have a creative life. They do support you. They do pick up the slack. But the systems are in place to where even their hands are tied. It reminds me of when I was a teacher in the public school system and doing the best that I could with fellow good teachers, but like the system was set up for us to fail. So,
yeah, it's just a systemic patriarchy. I've read a lot of Glennon and Doyle recently. Did you read Untamed?
Oh my God.
So good. She who is most selfless wins. And that's how, we stay down, is by assuming that the only way to be a woman is to be one that doesn't exist anymore. Even physically, the less of you that there is, the better.
Yeah.
Don't take up space with your body or your mind or your ideas. Just give them up. And I just don't agree. Unfortunately, because the systems are in place, it's an uphill battle. Okay, so even if I were to make it in stand-up, right? One of the reasons I can't go out every night and do an open mic is because while Jimmy John over here sleeps on a couch with his buddies, he can sleep in, but I've got to wake up at 5:00 in the morning because my child had a nightmare, or I got to get home to breastfeed. Jim Bob can go to New York. I don't know why he would, because his name's Jim Bob. Should we think of a better name for him? River. Can go live in Brooklyn and go study at Upright Citizens Brigade because he's got nothing tying him down. He can go just like work some flexible job. But then there's me, who has a mortgage and kids that I have to put through school. But I think now that the rise of the internet has happened, like I've been able to study at UCB and Second City and some of these places. So I'm able to receive the training that maybe a mother wouldn't have in previous generations. But I do think there's still this stigma of like, well, we can't take her seriously. How would she move to New York? I was up for this job at Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen to be a writer for the show, which was great, would be ideal. But I think that they ended up picking the local candidate because it's easier to dismiss the mom that lives in Texas. Even if I had more talent or I would have been a better fit. No, we're going to pick River because he lives in Brooklyn and he's there. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why though? Like in this day and age when there's Zoom and there's the internet and I could just as easily move as someone else, why wouldn't you choose me? Mm-hmm. So I think in order to overcome some of this systemic inequity, we have to have inclusivity programs for moms and we have to bridge the gap. I think some places are trying, but I don't think it's enough.
You know, it's a funny conversation to be having this week because I've felt, even with this, with the small little drop in the bucket that I'm trying to put out there of please keep pursuing your passions. Don't put yourself out to pasture. I know it's hard, but you've got to keep feeding that part of yourself. And it feels like an uphill battle a lot of the times. It's so much easier to just be like, but I'm tired. I just want to take off my shoes and watch Netflix. And, I've been doing online schooling all day because it does in the end still fall on us. And I don't know how you get over that besides to just do what you can.
Tina Fey, did you ever read Bossy Pants? Her memoir. I just loved it. I love her.
Oh yeah.
As a mother, she was trying to figure out, well, what do I do here? Do I have the second kid? Do I continue, my successful writing career? She said, I know I have enough money. I can just settle in Pennsylvania and just like live my life. But the reason why she didn't do that is for us, because she knew that there would be other moms that came along that would need representation, that it mattered. And had she not been there, I don't know how seriously I could take myself,
Yeah.
I'm funny, but I'm good at, oh, I bet you hate this one. Mommy blogging. Like people just assume, yeah. Oh, you're a writer. Well, which mommy blog do you write for? And then you're like,
right.
Just unroll all of my credentials and publications for you.
That's such a sliver of what I do. And I hate being called that. It's all that inherent misogyny though.
Yes.
Because it's not just a blogger, a mom blogger is automatically not taken as seriously.
Before an open mic, someone was talking and they were like, no offense, but I don't like female comics. I'm like, oh, okay. Like you don't know me. You don't know anything I'm about. What it really means, you think that I'm not smart enough to craft a joke.
My sense of humor is so mysterious that you would never be able to crack it. Like, don't even try with it.
I know. I'm like, do you really think that my gray matter is any different from Jim Bob's over there? It's really, really not.
I mean, I think again, it's like, well, women are moms and stuff. My mom's not funny. They're not even supposed to do this stuff. They're supposed to be fixing sandwiches and things. Did you hear when Tina Fey called David Letterman out for not hiring women writers?
Yes.
That was so much of what we're talking about here, where he's like, oh, well, I didn't think you'd want to be in my little dog and pony show. And she's like, no, we did. We wanted to.
Yeah, we still do. Take us seriously. And then also like, because I have a different experience than say, your couch surfing, typical stand-up comedian, like I have much more breadth of material. I can talk about things that, someone who's 25 years old and has never lived any life maybe doesn't know about.
Right. I mean, that's the whole reason for any kind of diversity is that richness, and variety of experiences so that it's not just the same old shit that's always joked about, the same movie that's made, the same TV show, the same jokes.
If I have to hear one more joke about an airplane, like, no.
I know. Whenever you hear someone that breaks out of that and knocks your socks off, it's almost always someone that doesn't fit into that young white male mold. All right. We should jump into the lightning round.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear some of these answers. The first one is, what is your effing desk? Your creative area, physical or otherwise, that's only yours?
So I have a lot of weird random stuff in my Gmail drafts. Like I'll write sketches, jokes, paragraphs, posts, whatever. And anytime something pops into my head, that's where I keep them. It's just my Gmail draft. So if anybody were to go through my Gmail drafts, they would think I was a crazy person. Like, what is... And that's just kind of where I keep it because it also goes with you everywhere you go.
What is keeping you sane right now?
Literally Prozac.
Yeah.
No, it's good stuff. I probably should have been on it for like 25 years, but there was just that stigma back in the day. Like, oh, you have to try everything else, meditation and prayer and reframing your life and finding your joy and don't complain. And then, no, it turns out it's just a chemical imbalance that I have. So happy to take my little 10 milligrams of Prozac every morning so that I don't die of depression.
I mean, you know how they tell diabetes patients,
oh yeah,
you need to try their stuff before we get you your insulin, your life-saving insulin.
Right. I'm like, I've tried all the stuff though. Yeah. Walk it off. Drink some water. You'll be fine.
Right. What is your best life hack?
Oh, 100% intermittent fasting. I'm all about it. I've read all the books. I listened to all the podcasts. I wish
they have podcasts on it.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh, amazing. Yeah. I should have also been doing intermittent fasting for 25 years because I was like suffering on this false paradigm of calories in, calories out for so long, so long. And then of course, like we talked about before, the more space you take up, the less you matter to people and the less value they place on you, which is bullshit, but it's just the way the world operates, right? So I remember just killing myself to try to stay in a normal BMI because I was at the upper part of the BMI, just being ignored and dismissed. And then I started doing intermittent fasting and it was just like, everything was easy. All of a sudden, it could be evolution made us to live this way. Maybe we didn't have access to all the food during Paleolithic times and fasting's actually good for you. So
people swear by it. I know it's
totally
it's a thing.
100%. I know I have my own little religion.
You could be ordained in intermittent fasting.
Oh my gosh, I totally should.
If you could do anything, maybe I already know the answer to this.
Right.
If you could do anything besides what you're doing now, what would it be?
I loved this question and I had a really long think about it. When I was in the United Kingdom, I was working in research and I loved it. And I just love British people, love them, love them. And then I came back to America and it was more of just the grind. I won't say which hospital it was I worked for, but it was very much, you're just a cog in the machine and you just are going to see these people. And so I looked at comedy and writing as kind of an outlet of like, one day I'll get to get out of this cardiology gig. But I took this job where I'm working from home and it's a British company and I love them and I love it. It's awesome. Like I get to talk to British people. I get to do my cardiology nerd stuff. And I'm like, what if this is my sweet spot where I am happy and fulfilled in my day job? And I just so happen to also do comedy on the side. I think I'm really struggling to define what success is in the comedy space. For a lot of people, it's like, oh, well, you have to be writing actively full-time for a TV show in order to be successful, or you have to be making several TV appearances or have a best-selling book or whatever. And I'm like, well, those are things that would be cool, but what if I were already fulfilled and I just happen to also enjoy jokes? In the past, I would have said, if I weren't doing cardiology, I would 100% be writing for like a late night TV show full-time. But I don't know. I love England, so I would love to like be on a panel show and for the BBC, like 8 out of 10 Cats or one of. Have you seen these shows?
No.
Oh my gosh, they're the best. They're so funny. I think I would love to write for one of those shows, but I would also totally be on one. Yeah, it'd be super fun.
We have quite a few listeners in England, actually, and actually, and a few in Scotland.
Scotland. I'm sorry to diss all of the other countries, but y'all are my favorite. You're my favorite.
All right. What is the best advice you've ever gotten?
Oh my gosh. I almost am ashamed of the source, which I'll tell you after, but it's, you wouldn't care so much what people think about you if you knew how seldom they did. And it was Dr. Phil. I'm like, that son of a gun has some wisdom, though.
You know, I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day. So
that's what my dad always said. Yeah.
There you go. What about the worst advice?
Well, it has to go back to fasting. Like, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That was actually an advertising slogan by the Kellogg's Corporation. It had nothing to do with science.
You bastards.
And that you have to, I know, jerks. And I'll tell you the humorous anecdote for how that happened is he was like very stout Seventh-day Adventist. Am I going to get dirty on this? Have you heard this?
I saw it on Drunk History. Did you see?
Yeah. Should I saw it? Is this safe for your podcast?
No. Go for it.
He was like really struggling because he masturbated too much. And so he thought that if you had a bland breakfast, it would stop you from masturbating. And so that's why he invented cornflakes. They're called antiwings. Yeah.
That is the most American Puritan thing I've ever heard.
Oh my gosh, 100%.
All right. Fill in the blank. Imposter syndrome is?
A female problem. It's just, I mean, I heard it put this way. Like, a woman will do stand-up for 5 years before she makes a website for herself or even calls herself a stand-up comedian. And a man, the first time he gets off of the open mic stage, he's making merch. You know, he is, I know men struggle with imposter syndrome. I don't think it's to the extent that women do. And actually, another writer friend, I was writing for a TV show. It was a pilot, and it didn't get picked up. Surprise, surprise. But I was feeling the imposter syndrome about it. And she said, just go in with the confidence of a mediocre white man. And I'm like, oh, that's so true.
It's so true. What was the last thing you read?
A doctor I work with is friends with George Saunders. So he got me the signed copy from George Saunders.
Ooh. And can you say the title real quick?
Yeah, it's called A Swim in a Pond in the Rain.
Okay.
So George was also, and he might still be, a professor at Syracuse. And so this is a book that was basically one of his college level classes where he dissects several Russian short stories with his students to figure out why they resonate and why they matter. And of course, since it's Russian literature, it's like, is it because they all kill themselves and jump in front of trains, you know? But it's really interesting. So basically deconstructing why literature speaks to our souls. And I do that deconstructing thing a lot of times when I'm watching stand-up comedy specials. Like, I enjoy their jokes, but I'll also look at how did that work and why did that work and what did they do there? And so it's that, but in literature form.
Ooh, cool. If you could have a song played every time you entered a room, what would it be?
My jam this year has been Florence and the Machine, Shake It Off.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to dance with the devil on your back, so shake him off.
So good.
Just a good tune. Just cannot listen to that one enough, you know?
Yeah. Last one. What is next on your bucket list?
I've been writing a book. So I keep submitting to this really important writers workshop at NBC late night, and I've been shortlisted a couple of times, and it's been quite an honor. When I didn't make it the first time, I wrote a screenplay because I'm like, well, I'm going to do something big with this like creative energy that I couldn't express on this, NBC thing. And then I got shortlisted again last year, and it was a big deal. It was like 2,000 people apply, 20 people are interviewed, 15 people are interviewed, So to make it to the interview stage is a big deal. And then they pick like 6. So I said, if I don't make it this year, there's this book I want to write because my kids love Captain Underpants and some of those like hilarious comedies. But I was always frustrated that they don't really have one by a woman or for girls with a female protagonist. So anyway, I was out camping with my family and I got the call from NBC this year that it wasn't my year. I didn't make it. And so I was like, dang it. So I walk over to the playground at the campsite and there was this like very sweet 15-year-old girl that was helping like look after some kids. And I was telling him about that we were getting these pugs named after the kids in Captain Underpants, George and Harold. And this girl goes, I used to love Captain Underpants. I was embarrassed to say I liked it because it was for boys. And I had always wished someone would have written one for girls. And I was like, you're kidding me. Because I was just on my way back here thinking that I need to write this book. Like someone's got to write this book. And I guess it's going to be me.
Wow.
So I did end up writing it. And I'm still like in the editing stages and stuff. But I named my title character after her. So I did. I was like, listen, I'm going to write the book and my main character is going to be called Maya Wickham. That's her name. And then if I make money off of this and I can send you to college, I totally will. So
that is, there's no denying that. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. So Maya Wickham, comedian. I also illustrated it. So it's illustrated as well. It's pretty funny. And basically I took a collection of all of my awkward junior high stories and everybody else's awkward junior high stories. And I made it Maya's. It's through her worldview.
I love it.
That's the thing is like, I might not be able to do stand-up comedy because of COVID, and I might not live in New York where I can get picked for, the job that I'm interviewing for late night, but nobody can stop me from writing. And right. I'm doing it. So I just keep doing it.
Keep doing it. We all benefit from it when you do. So
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been awesome to finally chat with you and virtually meet you. Hopefully we'll get to do it in person eventually.
Yeah, someday. Maybe we'll go to some writers workshop and we'll get to do it.
Awesome.
Cool.
That was such a great conversation with Crystal for a few reasons. One, we are all in much need of some laughter therapy right about now. And also, I loved the honesty that Crystal shared with everyone about what it's like being a mom in comedy and the challenges she faces when trying to get jobs that are typically going to single white men. I feel like the more honest conversations like those that we can have, the better we're all going to be. If nothing else, just to support each other, but eventually, hopefully, to change some of this stuff. To dismantle some of the systems that we were talking about that are so firmly in place and so committed to keeping us kind of hammered into these roles that we don't really fit in anymore, if we ever did. You can find Crystal on Facebook at facebook.com/creepygingerkid. I'll throw that in the show notes as well. And she's also on Instagram at Crystal L. Lowery. I also wanted to share a message with you from a listener. She said, "Hey, Leslie, just wanted to drop a note to say that I've been listening to your podcast and I've been loving it. I love that you've interviewed women that are also multi-passionate like yourself. It's giving me some hope because I'm having trouble starting. I feel like I need to pick something, which seems scary. Good to know there are others that also have seemingly dissimilar interests that can be pursued sequentially. So thanks. Also wanted to note that the conversations are so warm and intimate, which is somewhat rare in other podcast conversations. Loving it. Thank you. Thank you." Thank you, listener. Those words of encouragement mean a lot to me, especially just getting started on this new adventure of mine in podcast land. And I know totally what you mean about feeling like you have to pick one creative interest. I still think that a lot of the times. And the more that I'm talking to creatives of all stripes, the more I'm realizing that that's just not true. I think that's the coolest thing, is that so many facets of creativity just feed off of each other, and cutting off any of them is unnecessary and really hard. So let it all hang out and see what happens. If you're enjoying the show, give us a rating or review wherever it is that you get your podcast. That does a lot to help other people find the show as well. Thank you. While you're at it, make sure you're subscribed to the show on your podcast platform so that as soon as a new episode comes out, you're sure to get it. In the meantime, you can check us out on myeffingdeskpodcast.com. Don't forget about the listener survey on there, myeffingdeskpodcast.com/survey. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram at myeffingdeskpodcast, Twitter at myeffingdeskpod, and Pinterest and TikTok, myeffingdeskpodcast. Okay, I think I've got all my F's done for the day. There were a few hanging on, and they're now all out there. So that will do it for now. We'll catch you next time. And until then, go shake some shit up.